Hey, everybody. Welcome to CBD Business Accelerator and CBD Business Success. I got my friend and special guest, Kara Janowsky from Sonder Accounting. It's the right time of year at the end of the year to talk about some important accounting issues. So thanks for joining us as always, Kara.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again, Matt. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and your audience. And like you said, now is the time. A lot of folks are either grinding hard this week or preparing for 2022, right? And one of the big things that everybody's going to be facing in January is contractor reporting, aka filing 1099s. So I'm excited to talk with you about that and what that looks like in our space.
Nice. I'm excited to learn. I'm going to be taking some notes probably over here because you can never learn enough about this stuff. It's so important because you don't want to get on the radar of the IRS, that's for sure. And as a brand owner, they have so much to do already with running their brands and doing the marketing and sales and all that. It's hard to keep abreast of all the accounting issues on top of all the other things they have to do. So this is really important information because you know your stuff like really well. So we're going to cut to the chase and give you the real information that you need. And then of course you can always work with Kara as well. Then you don't have to worry about anything.
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, kind of what it looks like if you are working with an accountant like myself, or if you're trying to do it yourself. We'll talk about what both ways look like.
Gotcha. And I would recommend anybody that's watching, you should hire Kara and just take it off your shoulders. Because when you work with Kara, you don't have to worry. She's going to handle it all and it's not that expensive. So it's really what is your time worth? Like, doing it yourself and all that, it's not worth it, in my opinion. It's better to hire a pro.
I totally agree.
So Kara, what are 1099s versus W9s? I always get that confused. I can never remember what the difference is.
Yeah, it's so funny that they named it the forms. I don't know if that was coincidence or if there's a numbering logic behind that, that the 1099s and the W9s are related to the same process. So a W9 is what you receive from your independent contractor that provides you with the information that you need in order to file their 1099. So you, the business owner, will file the 1099 using the information from their W9. So the W9 is a basic information form. It gives you their address, their tax identification number, and tells you their tax entity structure. So for example, it tells you if they're an LLC or a C corporation, a partnership, or an S corporation. And that information is critical to you filing the 1099. So the W9, again, is what the contractor needs to give you.
Yeah.
So anyone that you work with in your business who's providing services to you should be providing their W9 form. And in fact, this is the one piece that's critical for every business owner to know, even if you're outsourcing the process to someone like myself. You have to make sure somebody on your team is responsible for retrieving that W9 for everyone, from everyone that you pay. Okay. Because what happens is if you wait until the end of the year, like right around now, a lot of folks are going out to their contractors and they're saying, hey, I need your W9 form. Right. And sometimes we're getting crickets. Sometimes it's like, well, you've already paid me. Our work is done. Why do I need to provide this to you? And that's a sad reality that we face. They do need to provide it. It is required by law. But sometimes, we're stuck as the enforcers, and that's just doesn't always happen.
You can't call the police on them. I'm just kidding.
Good luck.
That was actually a question I had too, is what happens if the contractor doesn't want to provide that W9?
Yeah. So if somebody doesn't provide a W9, the first thing is to document in writing that you've requested it twice, right? So send an email at least 2 times asking for that form. And if they don't provide the form, I would literally print that email to your files and save it in lieu of the W9. So that's like kind of your backup to say that you weren't the one at fault here. But then you will want to file your Form 1099 with as much information as you have. So hopefully you do have a mailing address for your contractor, so that you can still provide that information to the IRS. You would use what you know about the entity. If you have their formal, business name, you would want to use that. If you know they were operating as an individual, you would use that with their address. And if you don't have that tax ID number, you would file it with zeros. It's the best you can do, unfortunately.
Gotcha. And that would be enough to get by in the IRS's eyes if you covered your base like that.
It's an attempt. Exactly. So at least you won't be you won't be hit with like a penalty for ignorance of the law. You've made an attempt. You've provided all of the information that you can. There's still a possibility that it would be a flag in the eyes of the IRS. That's why you really want those W-9s. But it gives them what you have. It shows best effort.
Gotcha. And we were talking a little bit in our notes earlier. Are there issues with payments made by like other payment platforms like PayPal and other platforms like that? Like, what is the deal with that when you're making payments that way?
Yeah, good question. So, first of all, you're getting a W-9 for all your contractors, right? The threshold for filing a 1099 is $600 per year. So if you pay someone $599 or less, you do not need to issue this Form 1099. Okay. Now, sometimes you're making payments with a check. Sometimes you use systems like PayPal. Sometimes the contractor will invoice you maybe via QuickBooks and you're going to pay on QuickBooks. All of those payment platforms are going to offer a different terms of service as far as this 1099. So for example, if you pay via PayPal, PayPal actually files the 1099 for you. They are required by law to issue the 1099 for the payments that are sent to the contractors. So you would not want to issue the 1099s for those folks.
Oh, wow.
Right? So this is another reason to like default to a professional like myself. Because
what about Venmo?
Venmo, according to the terms of service, up until very recently has been specifically a personal provider. Right? So their terms of service have stipulated you should not use it for business. That's how they got around that reporting requirement for 1099s.
Interesting.
Okay. So Venmo, you would need to issue your 1099.
And like, who reads the terms of service? Like, I don't. You're the only. See, that's why you need Kara. I just join and I start paying people.
Right. Exactly. And like, we don't work with any business owner that doesn't use Venmo. There's not a single one on our list that doesn't.
Everybody uses it nowadays, and PayPal, like they're just ubiquitous. And so you got to know the rules, people, because you could get bit in the butt. Or right. So like with PayPal, what if you did issue the 1099 on top of theirs? Then what could happen there?
The side effect is on the contractor's side. So what it looks like to the IRS is an inflation of their income. So it's a problem for the recipient, the person that you're issuing that form for.
Oh, man.
Right.
Like, so I did all this work for you and now you're jamming me up.
Yeah. Right. If you paid them $2,000 through PayPal, PayPal is going to report $2,000 and you're going to report $2,000. So the IRS thinks it's $4,000. So it's if then they report on their tax return only $2,000. Let's say that was their only income for the year, right? Maybe they're struggling this year. That's going to be a flag for audit with the IRS pretty quickly.
Oh man, that's terrible. Like, so make sure you pay attention, people. You don't want to jam your people up that work so hard for you. And like, what about? I saw something in the news recently where our buddy Joe Biden created, or I don't know if he did it, but somebody in the government created some new law where I think if you pay somebody over $60 now, you have to track it or something.
I haven't seen that. I did see that there was a lot of discussion at the end of or a couple of months ago, right, about opening up banking visibility, that banks were going to have to be reporting those sort of transactions for anybody with over, I think the amount was like $600 in their bank account, but I don't know the details on that. What I understood about that was not that it related to businesses specifically, but that it was all individuals.
Yeah, I think it's all individuals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's just another way for them to look over your shoulder, but I don't know exactly the details of that situation.
Gotcha. And with the 1099s and W9s, how does a person get started with all that?
Yeah. So, as we mentioned, you'll want to look at those W-9s. So the first thing you do is you get that W-9 in the door. You're going to look at it to see if they are what their tax structure is, right? So if they're an LLC or a partnership, you have to issue them the 1099. But if they are an S corp or a C corp, they don't need a 1099. Okay. So you kind of, start a list, right? Is how we do it. You start a list and you say, okay, this person doesn't need it because they're under 600. This person doesn't need it because they're an S corp. This one does because they're over the threshold and their entity type, right?
Yeah.
So you start your list and you get ready. Then by January 31st, you need to file the 1099. You can either do that electronically through various portals. You can request paper copies from the IRS. You can't just print a 1099 and mail it in, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
They have it's like a carbon copy set that you'll receive if you want to paper file them. I don't recommend it.
Yes.
If you request it now, you might get those forms on time. You might. Probably not, though. So,
Yeah, it's not very efficient to do it that way
yeah.
for sure.
So like
Um,
more realistic is around right now. You're going to contact an accountant like myself and you're going to say, hey, I need help filing my 1099s, and they are going to request from you the W9s and they'll take it from there.
Gotcha. And what else was I going to ask you? Is there anything missing that we haven't hit on yet? Just want to
Not
make sure.
necessarily. I guess the one piece is like, what happens if I don't do this, right?
Oh yeah, that's a
So
great question. Like, what if you just ignore it and then, well, you're gonna have to pay the tax on all that money you paid those people, right? Instead of them paying their tax, you would pay their tax, basically.
that is what can happen, like super down the road. What usually happens is people are afraid of this process, so they don't do it. And they'll actually be penalized for failing to file the 1099s, because usually people still report these contractor payments on their tax return.
Gotcha.
Right. So usually people are trying to avoid that tax. So they'll still report it on the tax return. Then the IRS will say, well, where are your 1099s? And those payments, those penalties are steep. I would really recommend avoiding them. I gosh, I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but most business owners will save a lot of money by filing their 1099s rather than being penalized, for sure.
Gotcha. So yeah, people, I mean, it's important, and you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. Otherwise, you're going to get on that radar of the IRS, and you definitely don't want that. I've had friends that have battled the IRS. Like, I got a friend right now that he's going through crazy court cases. So you do not want to F with the IRS. Trust me.
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
the they're the worst. Like, yeah, it's not fun. And so yeah, like my friend offered a $16 million settlement and they told him no. So yeah, it's like you can get into deep trouble, especially when you get bigger and bigger. This guy is
Yeah.
obviously successful, but like still, like you don't want to mess with it. So
Yeah.
what's the best way if somebody wants to talk with you about working with you? Can they set up a call and see if it's a good fit?
Absolutely. So we are at sonderaccounting.com. You can find a link to my calendar right through there, or you can email me at hello@Sonder Accounting. That's SONDER. That email comes to me, and yeah, we'll set up a call. We do kind of like a discovery session at first just to see what your needs are. I do that as a complimentary call, and then we go from there and see if we can help you.
Nice. So, people, I highly recommend working with Kara. She's going to take the weight off your shoulders and you won't have to worry about that part of it. And it's well worth the investment in working with Kara to do that. So, I suggest setting up a call and seeing if it's the right fit for you and your brand. And I'm confident it will be. And Kara and I will be back, I'm sure, in like a month or two to do some more topics on the accounting side, because I feel like it's important and we don't talk about it enough and we need to be educated. Like, I remember even the last talk we had, there were so many intricate rules that you broke down. I was like, man, I didn't know that. Like if you sell more than 200 of a product, you got to pay tax in this state. And just gets so
Mhm.
confusing. And so it's better just to work with somebody like Kara, who's already dug in deep and she knows all the intricacies of this. So we appreciate what you do for the CBD industry, because as far as I know, you're the only accountant that specializes in CBD. Is that correct?
Yeah. As far as I know plenty that work in the marijuana space and the broader cannabis industry, but CBD is our focus for the last 5 years. So that's us.
Yeah, that's incredible. So that track record speaks for itself. And so people reach out to Kara, or you can reach out to me if you want the intro. Happy to do that. And we will see you again in a little while, and we'll cover some more topics on accounting. So thank you for watching us, and thanks, Kara, for joining us today.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, we'll see you next time.